The day I opened my acceptance letter to nursing school at the University of Central Florida, I thought my life had finally begun. But just 1 week later, when I saw the bill for tuition, fees, and books, my dream nearly collapsed. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just about getting into college. It was about surviving the debt that came with it. And I had to make a choice that could shape the next 20 years of my life. Should I borrow from the government or sign my future away to the bank? I still remember that afternoon as if it happened yesterday. I was sitting in our small living room scrolling through my phone, half nervous and half bored, when I heard my parents burst through the front door. My dad's footsteps were uneven, as always, because of the limp he had carried since his military service. My mom's voice was full of excitement. "Amelia! Amelia!" she shouted, waving a large envelope in her hands. It came! The letter came! Before I could even stand up, they were both in front of me. My dad's eyes shone with pride as he handed me the envelope. I tore it open with trembling fingers and pulled out the letter. "Congratulations! You have been admitted to the University of Central Florida College of Nursing." The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I looked up at my parents, and in that moment, everything else faded away. We hugged each other tightly. My dad's rough hands pressed against my back, and my mom whispered, "You did it, baby. You're going to be the first in our family to become a nurse." I was their pride, their hope, their dream for a better future. That night, the three of us sat at our old wooden dining table, the same table we'd had since I was a child. My mom had cooked her special meatloaf, the dish she always made when we had something to celebrate. Over dinner, we started talking about the future. I told them about my dreams, to finish nursing school, to work at a hospital, and eventually to buy them a new house where my dad wouldn't have to climb stairs with his bad leg. "One day," I said, my fork pointing in the air as if it were a declaration, "I'll make sure you both never have to worry about money again. I'll take care of you the way you've taken care of me." My dad chuckled, his eyes glistening with pride. "We don't need a big house, Amelia. Just seeing you follow your dream is enough." But deep down, I wanted more than enough. I wanted to rewrite our story, to lift us out of the quiet financial struggles we had carried for years. That dream hit its first wall just a few weeks later, when the reality of college costs set in. The tuition, the textbooks, the lab fees, the uniforms for nursing clinicals, everything added up so quickly that it felt like an avalanche crashing down on me. When I first logged into the student portal and saw the bill, I felt my stomach drop. "How are we going to pay for all this?" I whispered to myself. My dad, who received disability benefits but couldn't work heavy jobs anymore, and my mom, a teacher at a small local school, simply didn't have the financial cushion to cover it. They had already sacrificed so much to raise me. I realized with a painful clarity that I couldn't let them carry this burden. That night, lying awake in my small bedroom, I knew I had to find another way. Fast forward a few years and here I am, a proud nursing graduate from UCF. Somehow I made it through without crushing my parents financially. The secret? Student loans. But not just any student loans. I had to be smart about them. Like many students in America, I faced the big question: should I borrow from the government or from private banks? This question shaped my college years, and now looking back, I want to share everything I learned, because it might just help someone else avoid the mistakes I almost made. If you're not familiar with student loans, let me break it down. In America, the majority of college students need financial aid to cover the cost of tuition. Scholarships and grants are wonderful, but they don't always cover everything. That's where loans come in. And students like me usually have two main options: federal student loans, provided by the U.S. Department of Education; private student loans, offered by banks, credit unions, or other private companies. At first, I didn't understand the difference. I just knew I needed money to get through school, but the more I learned, the more I realized that this decision could shape my financial future for decades. Federal loans are the ones funded by the government. They're designed to make education more accessible. The government sets the interest rates, which are usually lower than what private banks offer. And those rates are fixed, meaning they don't jump up and down unpredictably. On top of that, federal loans come with repayment plans that are based on your income. That means if you're not making much after graduation, your monthly payments can adjust to match what you can actually afford. And here's the kicker. If you go into public service, like nursing in certain hospitals, there are even programs that can forgive part of your debt after a number of years. Private loans, on the other hand, come from banks and financial institutions. They don't play by the same rules. To qualify, you usually need good credit, or a co-signer like a parent who promises to take responsibility if you can't pay. The interest rates can be higher, and they're often variable, which means they can increase over time. But private loans also give you the ability to borrow larger amounts of money, often without the limits that come with federal loans. That's tempting when your tuition bill feels impossible to cover. When I chose federal loans, I immediately noticed the benefits. The interest rates were lower than what private banks were offering. My payments after graduation could be tied to my income, which gave me peace of mind. And I knew there were forgiveness programs out there if I met certain conditions. It felt like the safer, more student-friendly option. But federal loans aren't perfect. The biggest drawback is that there's a cap on how much you can borrow each year. For a nursing program at UCF, the costs were significant, and the federal loans didn't cover everything. There were semesters when I had to scramble, taking on part-time jobs and applying for small scholarships just to close the gap. Private loans, I discovered, could have filled that gap easily. No strict borrowing limits. If you have good credit or a supportive cosigner, the process can move quickly. They can cover tuition, housing, even living expenses. At times, I considered taking one out, just to breathe a little easier. But then I looked deeper into the risks. The interest rates could rise, leaving me trapped with payments I couldn't control. There was no safety net if I lost my job or faced financial hardship. And banks don't forgive. They expect their money no matter what. I pictured myself drowning in debt and I pulled back. So what did I actually do? I leaned on federal loans first and only borrowed what I absolutely needed. I worked part-time at a local cafe, sometimes pulling long nights studying after late shifts. I applied for scholarships every semester, even the small ones. I budgeted tightly, buying used textbooks and cooking meals at home instead of eating out. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried from exhaustion, wondering if I had made the right choice. But now that I'm finished, I can say this. I'm graduating with debt, yes, but it's manageable. And more importantly, it's not a crushing weight on my family. If you're a student standing where I once stood, here's my advice. Start with federal loans. They're safer, more flexible, and built for students like us. Only turn to private loans if you absolutely must, and even then, borrow carefully. Don't take more than you realistically expect to earn back once you're working. And above all, remember this. Student loans are not just numbers on a page. They are years of your future. They can either open doors or chain you down. For me, the dream of becoming a nurse was worth the struggle. And one day soon, I still hope to buy my parents that house. Not with borrowed money, but with the salary I've worked so hard to earn. Because in the end, the best repayment I can give them is not just financial. It's the life they always dreamed I would have. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with a friend who might need to hear it, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your own student loan journey. And of course, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more real student money stories just like this one.